Here are the top stories this hour. 11 missing after fire outbreak in holiday homes for people with disabilities in France. Wildfires burn homes, forces evacuation in Hawaii. Plus, Nagasaki marks 78th anniversary of atomic bombing. Hello and welcome to Voice of the People World News. I'm Joy Adesowa Ramaseli. We begin with French authorities stating that 11 adults are missing after a fire broke out early on Wednesday in a holiday home for people with disabilities in the eastern France, while 17 others have been evacuated. Interior Minister Gerald Damanin tweeted that early this morning, a fire broke out in a facility for disabled people in the small town of Wincy-Maine, close to the border of Germany. He disclosed that despite the rapid and courageous intervention of fire departments, several casualties have been reported. Rescue operations are still ongoing. Wildfire in Hawaii, fanned by strong winds, has burnt multiple structures, forced evacuations, and caused power outages in several communities as firefighters struggle to reach some areas that were cut off by downed trees and power lines. The National Weather Service stated that Hurricane Dora, which was passing to the south of the island chain at a safe distance of 500 miles, was partly to blame for gusts above 60 miles per hour that knocked out power at night as night fell, rattled homes and grounded firefighting helicopters. Acting Governor Sylvia Luke issued an emergency proclamation on behalf of Governor Josh Green, who is traveling, and activated the Hawaii National Guard. Fire crews on Maui were battling multiple blazes concentrated in two areas: the popular tourist destination of West Maui and an island mountainous region. County of Maui spokesperson Mahina Martins said in a phone interview it wasn't immediately known how many buildings had burned. Martin stated that because of the wind gust, helicopters weren't able to dump water on the fires from the sky or gauge more precise fire sizes, and firefighters were encountering roadblocks blocked by downed trees and power lines as they walked their inland fire. Hawaiian Electric reported about 13,000 customers in Maui were without power. Pakistan's jailed former prime minister and opposition leader has been banned from holding public office for 5 years. Imran Khan has been prevented from participating in the upcoming elections later this year, which was a decision by the Election Commission coming in the wake of Khan's conviction and subsequent 3-year prison sentence over allegations of corruption. Khan, a former cricketer who switched over to politics and enjoys widespread popularity in the country, has denied any wrongdoing. He remains hopeful of having his conviction overturned through an appeal process set to commence on Wednesday. Nagasaki marked the 78th anniversary of the U.S. atomic bombing of the city on Wednesday, with the mayor urging world powers to abolish nuclear weapons, saying nuclear deterrence also increases risk of nuclear war. Shiro Suzuki made the remark after the group of 7 industrial powers adopted a separate document on nuclear disarmament in May that called for using nuclear weapons as deterrents. Suzuki stated that Russia's nuclear threat has encouraged other nuclear states to accelerate their dependence on nuclear weapons or enhance capabilities, further increasing the risk of nuclear war, and that Russia is not the only one representing the risk of nuclear deterrence. Recall, the United States dropped the world's first atomic bomb on the Hiroshima on August 6, 1945, destroying the city and killing 140,000 people. A second attack 3 days later on Nagasaki killed 70,000 more people. Japan surrendered on August 15, ending World War II and its nearly half-century of aggression in Asia. With Russia intensifying its efforts to cripple Ukraine's grain industry, Kiev may soon be able to lean on another crop in its stead: cannabis. Medical cannabis can ease the psychological trauma of war suffered by more than half of the population, lawmakers there contend. Long-awaited legislation that would legalize medical cannabis passed a first reading in Ukraine's parliament on July 13th. To become law, it must pass a second reading expected in the fall. Cannabis advocates stated that the Russian invasion has hastened efforts to legalize the drug. The co-founder of Ukraine-based drug policy reform advocacy group Cannabis Freedom March, Taras Ratsushny, tells reporters that the war is increasing demand for medical cannabis. He added that it has increased the number of patients in need of the drug, as thousands are now wounded and traumatized. Before the war, Ratsushny disclosed that everyone had a relative or acquaintance who needed medical cannabis. He stated further that with the full-scale invasion, the pain has become much closer, as it now affects everyone who is simply in Ukraine and is a potential target for an attack on a daily basis. Ratsushny is currently serving in Ukrainian army. Now in Africa, Niger mediation efforts appeared stalled after the leader of a July coup rejected another diplomatic mission, and neighboring allies who backed the armed takeover appealed to the United Nations to prevent a military intervention. Niger's junta denied entry to a joint delegation from African countries and the United Nations on Tuesday, resisting pressure to negotiate ahead of a summit on Thursday in which the main regional bloc, the Economic Community of West African States, ECOWAS, will discuss possible use of force. The move has dimmed hopes of a diplomatic resolution to the standoff that threatens to further destabilize West African Sahel region, one of the world's poorest that is already dealing with a string of coups and a deadly Islamist insurgency. Neighboring Mali and Burkina Faso, also ruled by military juntas, asked the UN Security Council in a letter on Tuesday to prevent any armed action against Niger, saying it would have unpredictable consequences and lead to the breakup of ECOWAS. Meanwhile, Niger has been slapped with more sanctions hours after its new military leaders rejected the latest diplomatic mission aimed at restoring constitutional order following a July 26 coup. This event occurred on Tuesday. Nigerian President Bola Tinubu ordered the new sanctions through Nigerian Central Bank, aimed at squeezing those involved in the takeover. The sanctions were imposed after the junta denied a joint delegation from West African states, the African Union, and the United Nations permission to enter Niger, resisting pressure from the United States and the UN to come to the negotiation table. Late on Tuesday, the Economic Community of West African States confirmed the joint mission had been aborted and disclosed in a statement that it would continue to deploy all measures in order to restore constitutional order in Niger. Regional and Western power fear the coup will destabilize the Sahel region of West Africa, one of the world's poorest, that is already dealing with strings of coup and a deadly Islamic insurgency. Still in Nigeria, President stated ahead of a West African Coalition's crisis summit in Abuja that Niger's neighbors have not ruled out military intervention. Bola Tinubu, who also chairs the bloc ECOWAS, still believes diplomacy is the best way forward to resolve the crisis. So far, efforts by ECOWAS and the United States to convince Niger's new rulers to hand back power to the democratically elected leader have made little headway. Now, the Armenian police have detained more than a dozen protesters outside a government building in Yerevan after they demanded the authorities take down the unblock the Lachin corridor, the only road linking the Armenian populated Azerbaijani region of Karabakh with Armenia. The Interior Ministry stated that 14 people were detained for failing to comply with police orders, but said they would be released soon. The protesters arrived at a government building in the morning and demanded authorities open the corridor, stating that if the government didn't do so, they wanted to be armed so they could open it themselves. Yerevan and international aid groups have warned that the dire humanitarian situation has been unfolding in Nagorno-Karabakh since convoy of food and medicine have been blocked from reaching the region. The protesters, who disclosed they were members of a military unit, stated that they intended to travel by bus to Kornizo, a village on the border with Azerbaijan, where trucks containing aid have been standing. Finally, the Chinese economy has slipped into deflation, with consumer prices falling for the first time in more than 2 years, in another sign of weakening demand. According to China's National Bureau of Statistics, the consumer price index fell by 0.3 in July from a year ago on Wednesday. That's the first time the index has fallen since February 2021. The cost of food, transportation, and household goods all declined in July. In particular, pork prices were down 26% and vegetable prices were down 1.5%. The producer price index, which measures goods prices at the factory gate, also dropped by 4.4% in July from a year earlier. It was the 10th straight drop in PPI and the first time since November 2020 that consumer and producer prices have fallen in the same month. Signs of deflation have become more prevalent in the world's second biggest economy in recent months, sparking concerns that China could enter a prolonged period of stagnation. And that's it on VOP World News. Many thanks for staying with us. I'm Joy Adesuwa Iromoseli. VOP Business comes up shortly. Stay with us.